you're seeing spheres within spheres, just like I had strung out the Cathara grids to show you the formation of the cells, the cell expansions of the Rosetta, and then I showed you how they were all put together, right? Where there actually was one center point, and all those Cathara grids were in the same place, but they were just different sized cells that were on them. Well, these are also in the same place. They're connected by the same center points. And boy, is that complex. That's some of the stuff I saw for the first time, the graphs that were just starting to come down in little tiny, they come in micro form, like microchips, and they end up in little scribbled diagrams that are so tiny. And I look at them later and go, why do I do that? It's because they come in that way. They come in condensed, and then I've got to pull them out and expand them out and turn them into something you might be able to look at or read. But anyway, these are the Yuga cycles. This is the turnaround cycle. The first point of entering that turnaround cycle is the Kalihara. This is the Hara cycle. The Kalihara, halfway through the Kalihara, you reach what is called the Kali Krista point and enter the Kali Krista part of the Hara cycle, and that is a point where you actually hit a point of half and half. You go into a Rasha state that is equivalent to Adonic matter. Now, Adonic matter of the inners, that is where we had 1/3 out in manifestation. We had half in manifestation and half in spirit. So you enter an Adonic state in order to make the change. All right? And means you have to have these frequencies and these open in your Rasha bodies out here. If your light body is going to have enough charge or joule quotient or quantum thrust to make that leap in quantum, which is a leap in speed as far as spin speed, that will allow for you to override the angular rotation of particle spin that your particles in an outer domain are in right now, and shift the angular rotation of particle spin into the natural axis angle that goes with the Adashi 1 cycle. So this is what we're about to engage. And we have entered it early. It wasn't, we were due, by the end of the 12 Tribes 2 classes is when they were preparing for that, preparing us for that, where we would have had this open and that open, then we could have kind of taken our time with this and with that, and gotten around to when the Sala Kali chamber was anchoring and opening on the planet. It's doing that tomorrow. And yeah, so we're doing the crash course. That's why, as far as typesetting or anything, if I can even articulate it enough where I can get the idea of how pieces fit, to you, that's good enough for now. There's lots of detail, but it's important that we understand what is happening, because right now it is the Aquafarian shield, the Indigo shield, and the angelic human, particularly those with Aquari coding, that stand between the potentials of any ascension left in the system at all, and very bad radiation burns within 50 years that begin a very, very bad cycle of fall that will be very unpleasant, that will probably be headed off at first with a rapid pole shift, so we won't have to worry about it in the first place while we're in our bodies, because it will shift the poles so fast here that we'll have a 3-day flip. And you have a 3-day flip, your oceans and mountains are no longer in the same places. And if your oceans and mountains aren't, neither are your houses, your cars, or your bodies. You know what I mean? Right? And that would mean that the spirit in our bodies, the spirit parts of our consciousness, not just the parts that make up our bodies, but there's a spirit essence that gives that third element where you have egg and sperm, and mane and ire, the Manu spirit part. Right? That part is the part that you try to get out. If you're going to die a body, you try to get that out in Bardo so you don't end up with yourself stuck. We would be stuck if it happened that way. So this is really big, what we're in the middle of. Fortunately, it's been very quiet so far. Nothing major has gone off. There's always a quaking over in Indonesia anymore, it seems. And they have, and then the tsunamis that started a couple of years back, all of that's connected. But we haven't seen, for the energy that's been flying here, it's been really, really calm. Let's hope it stays that way. So what we're doing is this transition. We have a Dashi 1 cycle, and that's the one we are going to. I don't know how many years these last. These yugas, at some point I have to correlate the old stuff from the cosmic clock things that told us how long yugas lasted. Now, there are yugas on the planetary level, on the solar level, on the galactic level, on the universal level, and even bigger and up further from there on the entire domain structure level. But just in one domain, you would have them on each of those levels. And then each of the levels of the Eka, the Veka, the Eka, the Akasha, the Akasha A, the Akasha Ea, they would all have their own yuga cycles because they have their own light body structure that the smaller pieces are in, and they're all connected as far as who's releasing energy and what's releasing energy, what's sending back flow, what's sending back flow return. What we're facing right now is not just planetary and not just solar. Our solar is aligning with the universal Veka Kali Yuga. And this is a falling universal Veka system, except for those planets who a long time ago received a host gift from a collective of 3 different Akashas that got together, guardian groups that were not fallen, Christian groups that are of a continual guardian nature, where they have no fall in their matrix and they use their free will only in service of the Christ, and they chose to be that way, and they chose their whole matrix in their free will to give their free will back to source to be able to help in case things like this happened in the outer systems. So we were given a long time ago as part of a much larger problem that involves our Veka, but also involves 2 other Eka-Veka systems that aren't even in our Akasha. We were given what was called the Crystal River Host. Part of the technicals of the Crystal River Host is a set of mechanisms, they're organic mechanisms, in a planetary Templar that can be used in the event, between light body structure and Rasha body structure and spirit body structure, that can be used in the event of a potentially inevitable fall, which is the category our Universal Veka fell into quite a long time ago. And it starts with what is called an aurora field, which is a particular type of light field. And first it requires that if a planet or a star has fallen to a certain degree, there's a chance of hosting it into a star that is still viable. And that's what was done in the Amenti rescue mission with both our sun and our Earth. Earth and all of the planets in this system were originally part of Tara, which was Universal Stargate 5 and Density 2 in this system. So we have been a hosting system for a long time. And in that hosting system, we have the ability to, if this gyrodome, they call it a gyrodome because it forms a gyrating dome. It's actually a gyrating sphere, but only half of it is here, and the other half goes through the Adori side that's on the opposite rotation. So it's a gyrating sphere that would look like a dome because you can only see half of it. So they refer to it as the gyrodome. But it creates literally, it takes the original hosting imprint of the star body or planet that is falling, and it combines it with an imprint, the lower frequency imprint of the larger star structure that was hosting it, and it literally births a new 3-dimensional reality field as an evacuation station that has the capability of, as long as a host line is run from a different system that is not falling at all, they can go through the Kali change, the end of a Kali Yuga, and they can actually still ascend from this particular outer domain into the next Adashi domain. And that's what this whole thing we've talked about, gyrodomes, aurora fields, all of these things, they're all a part of this original gift of the Christ that was given to us a long time ago. There were several other star systems that were going into fall crisis in our Universal Veka system long before Earth did, and they were also given gyrodome technologies. One of those is Sirius B, which is Universal Stargate 6 in our Universal Veka system. When it's the 6 Cathara Center 6 on the Cathara grid, and when you realize they're the Universal Stargates as well, Sirius B is the Density 2 Stargate. There was also the Density 3 Stargate, Andromeda 9. So we have the 3, the 6, and the 9 line up, running up on the one side, whatever side is, I have to look at them and turn around this way as if I am them, on the 369 side of the Cathara grid. That runs a particular line where the fields that are created in each of these has a gyrodome field. All right, when it's activated, the one in USG3, which would be around Earth, would allow for the rebirth, the very rapid rebirth of an ascension Earth imprint, part Earth, part Eartha. And that would be the Density 1 level. On Density 2, it would have Sirius B, and is also connected to Density 2 Sala, which is the USG4 on the outer, but it connects in to the Eden domains. So it takes a step in, goes up to Density 2, and takes a step in to the Edens. When it gets to Density 3, it's connected into Andromeda. That takes a step into the Adons. So it's actually taking the frequencies back through, and it's allowing the frequency support of the Rasha body. A period of time evolving in that particular structure that's created by the gyrodomes will allow a progressive ascension where we can go into a full, and there will be a point where the Ascension Earth, Ascension Circe, and Ascension Andromeda will be able to complete a full Kalihara cycle and go into the Adashi Ascension cycles. Eartha, our host star, because of the frequencies, and there are certain frequency points that trigger that moment as far as when that turnaround begins. And once it starts, you don't stop it. It's a natural phenomena that occurs in natural physics of light body and Rasha body dynamics. They are going through starfire because of the frequencies that were flying here and things that happened here. It triggered the Eartha body starfire program. They are going into starfire between 2047 and 2052. They're going into this swing, which means Earth is going to be hanging here. It would be falling here. It would be imploding if it weren't for the fact that the gyrodome field is here to hold it intact, to serve as its surrogate host, because its host is starfiring. Earth can't starfire. Earth's best chance, now the Ascension Earth, which is formed by that surrogate host field that is the gyrodome aurora field, that is the new Earth, Ascension Earth, the Earth that we are standing on now, whatever can pick up enough, regenerate enough frequency where it can make it into slide into the aurora fields, will be able to rejoin the ascension path. Things that will not will have two choices. One, as long as everything works out well and the host stays, they will be, when you get to the point where you naturally make the leaps and go into the turns, if you can't make that certain point when you go past the 7, then you go past the 0 point. At a certain point there, if you don't have a certain BPR, base pulse rhythm, which has to do with the core vibration of your encryption in the body, instead of going for the rise where it'll trigger the opening of these currents that allow for these to fully come in so you can make that leap, you spiral back down into the core frequencies and then turn around and go backwards and get popped out this way. But the shield shatters in the pop. It's called the passage of the ring of fire. It means that as long as you do it properly on what's called a natural Bardo wave, which is after the Bardo separation, where you've got all of the 15 layers of the Rasha separated from the 15 layers of the light body structure, there is one final gasp, one final, and it opens. There's a backdraft that pulls an opening just for a moment. And that allows for anything, any of the spirit body, consciousness still here to pass through. But it can't take a body form with it. But as long as it rides the Bardo wave, the encryption of the body form will ride with it, and it can reassemble once it gets back here. It will go back in here into the Edonic cycles, have to birth out again and do the Edonic Yuga again, and then birth out again here and do the Yuga here. But they can get the chance to go back into the next cycle. These cycles are referred to as the starfire cycle, that turnaround cycle. When we talk about the starfire cycle, that is a starfire cycle. So, this is what we're in the middle of. There's lots of new words, there's lots of new concepts. I'm surprised I'm still standing and haven't gone mad, actually, with these graphs. But I hope this is enough to begin showing you what I mean by Akashi cycles. The Akashi are the expansion cycles of creation coming out. And then there's the turnaround starfire cycle. And then there's the Adashi return cycles, of which there are 3. There's actually a very specific alignment of these that I'm hoping to get the graphs done enough to show you the concept. That goes back to something I think we introduced in Cathara 2.3 somewhere in there in those technicals that had to do with transfiguration waves. And on a small level, our DNA is structured that way. On a big level, this whole thing is structured that way. So for now, you're seeing them strung out in linear form. We'll try to have it where you can see the relationship with the eye of God. First eye of God forms here. It forms during that, the second, what do they call it, trimester of the Siddha cycle, the Akushate cycle. That's where the eye of God structure forms. And we want to get you there so when you come back tomorrow and you're wide awake, you'll be able to go and visit the eye of God and hopefully remember it. But you'll know where it is. That is the first eye of God, right? The one that was created first. There would be one that corresponds with the creation of the inner. So that was the core one. One that corresponds with the middle. One that corresponds with the outer. There'd be one that corresponds with each of the Adashis. This particular tape you will listen to the one that carries the wave. It was released in, what was that? That was when Ring 5 was activated. Yeah, Ring 5. When Ring 5 of Russia out here was activated in Tribes 1 classes, class number 5, this is when the beloveds knew that we were on the real rapid cycle, and they had to get the frequencies out here. They took us up to what are called the Adashi temples, which you'll see where they are in a minute. And from there, they took us on this really neat journey with the help of the Adonai from the Adore side, which is the counterclockwise in the same space as us, but moving counterclockwise side. And they opened this stream here, and they took us on a journey back to here, to what was called the Tunnel of Love in the Eye of God. And I've never felt frequencies like that before. It was just, for me, it was incredible. And I find it even more incredible that I can say that while having the distraction of having to listen to them to make sure the words came out right? Because I don't trance. We're not allowed to trance, we're not allowed to channel and that kind of stuff. So I have to hear what it is and then reiterate it here and bring it back out. So I still just kind of melted. And was able to go back, just like bounce back, by remembering a couple of scenes from the visuals, on the tape as they went by or as the meditation went by. You can do this too. This is the one you're going to be listening to tomorrow first, that will, before you get a live activation thing that's happening in the evening. But it's opening this whole stream. Now when that stream opens, when this opens, it's triggering what are called the Kusha crystals that are associated with the Eye of God, and each of those, and it's beginning the process of literally opening the flows, the core flows, all the way through. This is essential at this point that it is done here, and it's only the beginning. Once the core flows are open, we can progressively bring more of the flows into the body. We've got them activated in the rashas, but now we have to bring them into the light body structure out here in order to be able to begin the re-spiritualization and de-densification of the atomic matter. So, okay, I think I'm done with this one. Yes? Yes. Okay, next one, please. It's an awful lot of information lately since Tribes 1, Class 1. All of this has come in since then, since January. Okay, this is showing the same cycle, and the only reason this was the first graph that was a lot more messy. A lot more. It's showing you the same thing, but it has some other words on it. Eventually, I'm going to consolidate all these things as information about those domains. And this has to do with the most important thing that I wanted you to see on this, those cycles, which would be the core, the middle, the core, the inner, the middle, the outer, Adashi 1, Adashi 2, Adashi 3. They each have states of matter and consciousness associated with them. And that's where when you see words like Sati Seta and stuff, this is what they're referring to. So here in the core domain, you have the Yuna Siddha states of matter and consciousness. Here in the inner domain, you have the Yuma state. In the middle domain, you have the Sadi state. In the outer domain, you have the Seta state. When you go through the Christ star transition through the Starfire cycle and come over here into the Adashi 1 cycle, you have the Sadi Seta state. So when we do Sati Seta projection journeys, what we're doing is bringing in the frequencies that take us there progressively. And that's the first thing. There's three things. The most exciting would be to span. If you get to the point where you can span, it means you can take your body not just to the Ascension Earth host field, but you can take it all the way to Eartha's surface and experience Eartha's surface as physical. And between 2047 and 2052, you would be able to ride Starfire then and ride right in with Eartha. Now, that's not going to happen for most people. There might be a few. I don't know. I wouldn't doubt it. The universe is always full of surprises, and some of them are good. Yeah. So anyway, there's comic relief there. It came from somewhere. I don't know where that came from either. But anyway, Eartha is doing that in 2047, 2052. Where was I going with that? Something about what happens to the ones who aren't going. We're going to the... what we are aiming for first, that's called spanning, by the way. That's being able to travel fully, to activate all of the spans. And remember, the spans are the crystalline bands between the rings in the Rasha body layers. The spans connect directly on the light body levels to what are called the orbs. The orbs are crystalline orbs that are between each of the 15 auric field layers. You know how you see little orbs floating around sometimes, or people are snapping pictures of orbs? Well, they're usually not our guys orbing. There's other forms of orbs you can do with your field and activate them with reverse currents, and that's what most of those things are that people get photographs of. However, a natural orb forms as you activate the levels of the rasha, which activate the levels of the light body field, and there are levels of progression where certain orbs form. At a certain point, you're able to hit a 0G force point, which means basically your bottom and top Merkabas spin at the same speed but opposite directions always. Never same spin sets, because that's Metatronic and, you know, that's death of your seed atom. But you get to the same spin and it actually all stops. You go so fast that, and you same spin on top and bottom Merkabas and they stop. And you hit a point of going in to the hedonic matter state. And that's the point we need to be able to reach in order to go. We have to begin the point, let's see, I believe that's the halfway point, the Kali Krista point, where it begins the full activation of the Christ star capsule, which is capable of the full 90-degree shift, then the rest of the 90-degree shift over into the proper angular rotation of particle spin for a Dashi 1. We don't have to accomplish this by 2047, thankfully, because of the Ascension Earth and its host field. We have about 223 years while that host field still stays viable. And in that period, right before the end of that period, Earth will have connected. Its gyrodome fields will connect with the Sirius B ones, will connect with the Andromeda ones, where we will be able to go back in. Earth will be able to starfire with its set because of the gyrodome host field. So that is what we're aiming for. And you never know. I mean, if this works well enough and things go as they're supposed to, there are many of us who may choose to keep these same bodies, and 223 years from now, you'll still be looking in the mirror saying, yep, still there. Hopefully a lot healthier than, than it might feel now, because you should be able to also, when you hit certain points in this, go into cellular regenesis, which means there is a certain peak point, and it's usually about the age of 33 in the activations of what happens in a body when it grows, and there is like a perfect balance point as far as the matter form. We degrade past that point here because of the mutation, and that's why our bodies die. There is the potentiality of regenerating cellular structure and rejuvenating the body back to its peak point around the age of 33. And that would be your Christed body, and you could orb in it, which means you could disappear, turn into a bit of light, and then deorb and come back into manifestation. And then if you want to go someplace again in any of the cycles, you could pull yourself into orb and go. Yeah. So it's called orbing once you get to full Christ or activation, but it's Christed orbing, not the kind of orbing that ones from places called hibernation zones do and other nasty places. So we'll find out about hibernation zones in a minute or two. Not a whole lot. I'm going to cover more of that when I want to talk about the general parameter first and just get you associated with the vertical maps and what that has to do with Russia. So when we get to the Eye of God, because that's the most important thing to get to tonight, you'll understand where Russia fits with the planet we're standing on and those kind of things. But there's some of the negative things about what is happening on the planet that has caused the need for this expedited activation of the Russias. We will talk about that tomorrow and what it means, and what we do, what we're being asked to do from there. We're not being asked to do any favors for somebody else. They're doing us a favor by bringing the information here, because without it, we'd be taking a nice, probably not so slow roll back down from this point, if we're lucky being able to get out at this point. When this point opens, the end of the Bardo for this system will be the point when the full Bardo end what's called the Bardet, the end of the Bardo cycle, for Earth, for Sol, for our sun, occurs. And that's when what's called the Nova cycle begins. The Nova cycle will last about 2 billion years, but nothing can live here by that time. All right, so this, in the 223-year period, this is when they have to pull the host line out, because this is when the sun is going to release that final gasp that allows for that one final opening of the backward door, the Dali backward door, and will allow for the consciousness field that is still viable here, that can't make it into this spin, to get out that way. Because otherwise, it will ride through a nova cycle. And that doesn't mean it will immediately blow up and disappear. But it will become dead, because there will be no life force being able to circulate, no prana coming back and forth. The mutations that does to races very quickly, as far as losing the ability to reproduce, losing the ability to biologically live without mechanical support, it becomes really, really awful. And the systems of control and malice that go into that state, the systems become very degraded in consciousness. Kind of like some of the nasty sci-fi movies you see, like, after the Holocaust kind of thing, where there's just really nasty people running around doing horrible things, and lots of metal, lots of machine-y type things, and, that kind of... There would be a cycle of progressive going downhill of what was left of any life force that survived. And it wouldn't be a pretty picture. Eventually, the radiation would be so great it would kill everything in a biological form here. And if something dies here, even if it gets vaporized, it still leaves calorine dust here that stays in the planetary shields, in the planetary matter body. And eventually, you can reincarnate from here, reincarnate over and over and over again, losing charge, losing the light body, like the shield structure, losing your quantum with each incarnation. That's what the path of reincarnation is. It's like regurgitation over and over and over and over till you can't throw up anymore. It's just like, really, it is not the path of going backward. That is the path of rebirth, where you get reborn. You come back out this way and try it again. This is the path of ascension. That is the path of reincarnation, the path of fall. And it usually takes a long time. It's a miserable existence. And the mercy at the end of it is being able to go through the implosion and explosion of nova, because it's a lot more peaceful being particle dust than living, trying to exist as a consciousness with an identity and a memory in a condition like that. So this planet will become, at that point, as will our sun, a dead system. Even though its body will still be intact, it will no longer have any life force within it. Whatever was viable will go back out with that wave. If it can't make it up through either the starfire of Eartha and Sala, or the ascension field, the gyrodome field that is being generated for the new ascension Earth, it will go out that way. And whatever doesn't will become trapped here and eventually ride out a nova cycle, dying probably of radiation poisoning, bodily dying of radiation poisoning, and getting stuck in the planetary grids until probably about 2 billion years away. It will do the things that they tell you about novas. Now, usually they say novas occur in suns that have a solar mass of 7 or greater, which means 7 times the mass of our sun. What nobody here realizes is this is a binary sun system. It's a binary star system. And Sala isn't one of them. There's a piece of what was Sol that was stuck in density too, actually stuck in the Eumbic void between them. It is called Rabizod, and it is called the dark fallen sun. That is the other part. They will merge in the Eumbic, through the Eumbic void. And it alone has 7 times the mass of our sun. You put ours with it, you got 8 times the mass of what we call our sun. And that is definitely nova. All right, so there you go. Red giant stage, you do all sorts of nasty things happen in your solar system. We're not going to be around for that, but that is the path that is unfolding here. And it is a path of no return in that regard. You can't stop that particular set of things happening. When the sun goes into Bardo, that is evac time in any solar system. And we have a period of time in which to do that. So, anyway, next one, please. Almost there. There's a lot on these, and I could spend 2 days on these alone that are coming. I won't, just so you know, not this particular one, but the ones that are coming right after it. I will give you a basic rundown so you understand when you project to an Adashi temple that you know where it is and what that means. All right? So you know where it is in relation to other things around you and what you've just learned. Now, what I want to show you on the personal level, we've talked about Rasha bodies, right? When we talked about the Rasha bodies, which are the dark matter bodies, right? And they're not dark, they just look dark from here because they're a different angular rotation of particle spin. So we've been looking at them this way, without little faces on them yet. But we've been looking at this being their top, right, with the Cathara grid, and that being their bottom. And then their 12 band would be here. That 12.5 span would be the one running here, and then out to 15 would be here, right? So that particular one that would come out to here would be the Rasha body. Now,